Some nights leave a mark on you, moments that stick with you forever, long after the darkness fades. Tonight, we dive into a series of spine-tingling stories, each one more chilling than the last. From terrifying encounters with strangers to mysterious events that defy explanation, these true tales will keep you on the edge of your seat. So sit back, turn off the lights, and let's explore the shadows together. But before we get lost in the shadows, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out our chilling upcoming episodes. If you're enjoying our eerie stories, leave a like, drop a comment, and share the terror with others. And for even more eerie content, follow us on social media. Keep the fear alive. Thanks for joining me on this spooky journey. Now, let's dive into the nightmare. Some nights etch themselves into your memory, and one such night unfolded for me about 20 years ago. At 17 years old, I was filled with the rebellious spirit of adolescence, craving freedom under the strict gaze of my parents, who imposed a 1 a.m. curfew. My friends, Jake and Max, and I hatched a plan. We would tell our parents we were having sleepovers at each other's houses. Eager for an adventurous night, we set off in my souped-up Camaro, the engine purring like a content cat. Around 10 o'clock we hit the road, cruising aimlessly, grabbing snacks and exploring our small town. With the thrill of teenage freedom coursing through our veins, we felt invincible. As the night wore on and our youthful exuberance began to wane, we decided to embark on a 45-minute drive to a nearby tourist spot. By the time we arrived, the clock struck 2 a.m. and the novelty of our escapade was fading. Looking for something to spark our excitement again, we turned down an unlit street, the headlights of my car slicing through the darkness. What started as innocent fun quickly turned ominous. From the shadows, a car emerged, its headlights off, pulling out from a parking space and falling in behind us. Instinctively, we sensed danger. My heart began to race. Soon, we realized we weren't just being followed by one vehicle. Two cars had taken an interest in us, engaged in a perilous game of cat and mouse. The car directly behind us began to bump our rear, causing me to swerve slightly. Panic surged as we ignored traffic signals, trying to shake them off. With no cell phones to call for help, we relied on the roaring engine of my Camaro to escape. Jake and Max were quiet, tension filling the car as we accelerated. Suddenly, the car behind us flickered its headlights on and off, a menacing signal that sent chills down my spine. The second vehicle was relentless, pushing us to speeds nearing 90 miles per hour. Adrenaline coursed through me, and I felt the grip of fear tighten. One car tried to ram us from behind, while the other aimed for my side. "Just hold on!" I shouted, pushing the accelerator to its limit, desperate for an escape. My heart pounded against my ribcage as I spotted a main highway ahead, the faint glimmer of streetlights beckoning like a lifeline. As we approached the intersection, my heart leaped when I saw two police cars parked nearby. "There!" I yelled, a flicker of hope igniting within me. With a burst of speed, I ran the red light, praying the officers would intervene. In a heart-stopping moment, one of the pursuers sped past us, barreling towards the police. The officers sprang into action, chasing after the black vehicle. The adrenaline rushed through me as I finally felt a glimmer of safety. As we came to a stop, the night air thick with tension, the two vehicles that had been tailing us vanished into the night, leaving only the patrol car in sight. Relieved but shaken, I stepped out and recounted the terrifying incident to the officer, who listened intently, his expression grave. "We'll get them," he said, radioing for backup to apprehend the culprits. It turned out the men in the black vehicles were notorious carjackers, using aggressive tactics to intimidate drivers into submission. My heart sank at the realization that we had been their targets that night. Though relieved that our encounter had helped capture the criminals, the officer issued me a speeding ticket. "You should have pulled over and secured your vehicle," he advised. I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. In retrospect, That speeding ticket felt like a small price to pay to protect my cherished Camaro and my friends. The incident left a lasting impact on me and my friends. We became more cautious about our late-night adventures, forever marked by the understanding that danger lurked in the shadows. It also made me appreciate the role of law enforcement in keeping our community safe. In the years that followed, I kept in touch with the officer who had helped us that night. Grateful for his swift response and the subsequent capture of the carjackers, I found myself drawn to law enforcement. I decided to pursue a career in this field, enrolling in college with a major in criminal justice. That harrowing night fueled my drive to protect others from similar frightening experiences. I worked my way through the ranks, gaining valuable experience in various investigations, helping to apprehend dangerous criminals and bring justice to those who had been victimized. Looking back, I realized that night had changed the course of my life. It instilled in me a strong sense of purpose and taught me the importance of staying vigilant. The memory of that terrifying chase served as a constant reminder of the dangers that can arise unexpectedly. Today, as a seasoned police officer, I strive to protect and serve my community, knowing that every encounter has the potential to make a positive difference. Each time I recall that speeding ticket, I am filled with gratitude for the officer who turned a terrifying situation into a catalyst for my career. The lesson from that night remains clear. Vigilance is key, and sometimes the scariest experiences can lead us down a path we were always meant to follow. In the summer of 2020, an eerie stillness settled over my town, transforming it into a desolate landscape where time seemed to stretch infinitely. The pandemic had cast a shadow over daily life, with streets devoid of activity and parks feeling more like ghost towns. While my town wasn't heavily impacted by COVID, the atmosphere was thick with an unsettling sense of isolation. Jobs vanished overnight, and everyone was instructed to stay inside, leading to a profound case of cabin fever that had me clawing at my walls. With little else to do, I took to walking. I wandered through the quiet suburbs, empty parks, and the surrounding woods, seeking solace among the trees. The few stores that remained open became regular stops, and I soon found myself longing for the freedom of the outdoors. My walks evolved into hikes, each new trail becoming a refuge from the stifling confines of my home. As the weeks rolled on, my routes became a mental map, and the rhythm of my footsteps on the forest floor was comforting. I began craving a challenge, a hike that would take me deeper into the wilderness. One morning, I set out to conquer a 10-mile loop that promised to lead me far from civilization. Arriving at the trailhead, I was greeted by an empty parking lot, amplifying my nervous excitement. I meticulously packed my gear, water, snacks, a first aid kit, and a map, aware of the need for caution in my solitary adventure. Still, anxiety crept in. What if I got hurt out there? But I pressed on, relishing the familiar pace of my feet on the path. 3 miles in, the solitude morphed into a friend rather than an enemy. I lost myself in the serenity of the woods, allowing my mind to wander. As I veered off the beaten track drawn by a distant stone peak, I felt a surge of confidence. The terrain was rugged but intriguing, beckoning me forward. It was in this desolate section of the forest that I stumbled upon something unsettling. A pair of worn shoes discarded near a ravine, their laces tangled carelessly. Next to them lay folded shirts, fluttering eerily in the breeze. Curiosity piqued. I brushed it off as remnants of careless day trippers and continued toward the mountain peak. As I pressed on, I began to notice strange lines in the dirt, patterns that suggested something heavy had been dragged through the earth. Unease settled in as I followed these markings deeper into the woods. The allure of adventure began to fade, replaced by a creeping discomfort. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted movement ahead, My heart raced as I edged closer, peering over an embankment. There, in a clearing, stood a group of men, their clothes ragged and faces obscured by grime. They were gathered in a makeshift circle, lifting concrete blocks above their heads in a bizarre, ritualistic manner. My pulse quickened as I watched, anxiety tightening my chest. The men chanted in unison, their voices resonating ominously through the trees. A slender figure moved among them, striking their backs with a thin instrument, drawing glistening blood under the harsh sunlight. Horror gripped me as the unsettling truth began to dawn. The discarded clothing I had seen earlier belonged to these men. Panic surged within me, and I turned to flee. My heart raced as I stumbled through the underbrush, the forest feeling like it was closing in around me. I could still hear their cries echoing in the distance, a haunting reminder of the grotesque scene I had just witnessed. Just as I broke free from the thicket, I was confronted by another group of men arriving at the ravine. They removed their shoes and shirts, tying ropes around their waists, each leading to a cinder block marked with ominous words. They greeted me with solemn nods, their faces set with grim determination, before slowly making their way toward the mountain peak. I watched in a mix of horror and disbelief as they dragged the blocks behind them, the sight forever burned into my memory. The forest fell silent again, an unnatural quiet enveloping the scene as if nothing had happened. I never returned to that trail. What had once been a refuge now felt like a site of haunting memories and unsettling mysteries. The men and their bizarre ritual remained a chilling enigma I had no desire to unravel. From that day on, I stuck to the marked paths, my sense of adventure replaced by a deep respect for the unknown and an instinctual fear of what might be hidden in the wild. Even now I can hear the echoes of their chants and the silence that followed, a reminder that some corners of the world are best left unexplored. It wasn't just isolation that terrified me, but the terrifying unknown lurking just beyond the safety of the path. I was an ordinary girl, living in a peaceful small town with my loving family. Known for my warm heart and gentle nature, I had never known anything but quiet serenity, until darkness crept into my life and twisted it into a living nightmare. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. At first, there were the odd, inexplicable events, objects shifting on their own, a cold draft when no window was open, and whispers that seemed to echo from the corners of the house. I dismissed them as figments of my overactive imagination or simple coincidences. But as days turned into weeks, these disturbances grew more insidious, more unsettling. One night, the terror reached its peak. I awoke to find myself paralyzed, unable to move or even cry out. My bedroom, once a safe haven, was now cloaked in an oppressive darkness that seemed to press against my skin. An icy presence surrounded me, and then I heard it, a voice, guttural and malevolent, slithering through my mind. It spoke in a language I couldn't comprehend, taunting me with threats and promises of eternal suffering. I was trapped in my own body, unable to fight back, my only refuge a desperate plea for release from this unseen tormentor. The nightmarish events didn't end with that single incident, they only intensified. My sleep was shattered by relentless, horrifying dreams. Dark, shadowy figures invaded my nights, their whispers carrying twisted secrets that seemed to seep into my very soul. Each dream left me more drained and terrorized than the last, and I woke up each morning feeling as though I hadn't slept at all. Seeing me suffer, my family grew increasingly alarmed. They sought out a renowned paranormal investigator, hoping he might uncover some answers. When he dug into the history of our home, he discovered a chilling truth. Our house had once been a focal point for occult practices and dark rituals. The knowledge that the very walls of our home had witnessed such malevolence sent a shiver down my spine. Desperate and running out of options, my family called upon Father Thomas, a seasoned exorcist known for his unyielding battles against demonic forces. When he arrived, I felt a flicker of hope amidst my fear. Father Thomas came prepared, armed with ancient prayers and sacred artifacts, ready to confront whatever had taken hold of me. The exorcism was an ordeal unlike anything I could have imagined. My body twisted and contorted in unnatural ways, as if controlled by some dark force. My voice, no longer my own, twisted into guttural growls and eerie, inhuman sounds. Father Thomas fought valiantly against the demon, reciting prayers and wielding holy objects with fierce determination. The battle was intense and grueling, a relentless clash between light and shadow that felt almost too overwhelming to endure. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity, but eventually, the demon was expelled from my body. I lay there, completely drained, feeling as though every ounce of my energy had been siphoned away. My family was overwhelmed with relief, believing the nightmare had finally ended. But the darkness had not been fully vanquished. Months passed, and while I appeared to have physically recovered, a lingering sense of dread refused to leave me. Strange occurrences continued, albeit less intense. Lights flickering on and off, sudden cold spots in the house, and fleeting shadows that seemed to move just out of sight. It was as if the darkness had not been eradicated, but had merely retreated, lying in wait for another opportunity to strike. Haunted by the echoes of my possession and the persistent shadows, I resolved to take control of my own fate. I immersed myself in the study of the supernatural, determined to arm myself against any future threats. I learned everything I could about dark forces and protective measures, driven by the need to never again feel so helpless and terrified. With this newfound knowledge and a steely resolve forged in the fires of my ordeal, I dedicated my life to helping others who were tormented by the same forces that once consumed me. The haunting of my soul is not just a tale of fear and survival. It is a chilling reminder that even in the grip of the most unspeakable horrors, the strength of the human spirit can endure. Though shadows may linger and nightmares may persist, the fight for light and the will to survive can guide us through even the darkest of times. It serves as a testament to the power of resilience and the unyielding quest for peace amidst the terror that seeks to overwhelm us. Have you ever wandered into the unknown only to find yourself face to face with something that defies explanation? Recently, I reconnected with a friend from my days of conducting supply caravans on the Navajo reservation. During our conversation, she mentioned a bizarre encounter experienced by one of the women in our caravan, a woman we'll call Amanda. Intrigued by the tale, I reached out to Amanda to hear her story firsthand. Out of respect for her culture and the taboos surrounding it, we've changed some names and details. To set the scene, the land we traversed was steeped in both beauty and isolation, particularly around Black Mesa. This area, known for its dry, shallow topography and sprawling dry creek beds, transformed during the rare periods of heavy rain into a flood of chaotic energy. The high deserts of Arizona held an eerie stillness, interrupted only by the rustling of sagebrush and the distant calls of wildlife. One afternoon, while the caravan was taking a break, Amanda noticed that one of the lambs had escaped its enclosure. Determined to retrieve it, she ventured out further than she intended. She was following a dry arroyo, hoping it would lead her back to the main road, but as the sun began to dip below the horizon, she realized she was lost. A sudden wave of anxiety washed over her, and soon enough, she found herself struggling to breathe. The dust in the air triggered her asthma, escalating into a full-blown panic attack. In that disoriented state, Amanda lost consciousness. When she finally came to, night had settled in, draping the landscape in darkness. The chill in the air heightened her sense of vulnerability. As she stood up and gathered her bearings, she heard a twig snap behind her. Instinctively she turned, her heart racing. There, in the dim light of the moon, she caught a glimpse of a dark figure retreating behind a tree. It was fleeting, but it felt alive, almost sentient. Thinking it might be her friend Charlie, she called out hesitantly, "Hello? Is someone there? I'm with the Colorado caravan and I think I'm lost." The only response was silence, amplifying her unease. Mustering her courage, she laughed nervously, hoping to ease the tension. "Can you help me?" After a moment of stillness, the figure stepped back into view. It appeared to be Charlie, beckoning her to follow. Relief washed over her, and despite her disorientation, she felt a flicker of trust. They began walking back up the arroyo together, the shadows shifting around them as the moon illuminated their path. However, a sudden jolt of pain shot through her head, like a severe migraine, forcing her to stop. When she looked up, she was confronted by 3 more figures emerging from the shadows. These creatures did not look human. Instead, they resembled large coyotes, their eyes gleaming in the silvery light. 10 eyes in total stared back at her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. As the reality of the situation hit her, Amanda stumbled back in fear. The coyotes remained still, their bodies tense and alert. Panic surged within her as she turned and fled, her instincts screaming at her to escape. She ran for what felt like an eternity, her breath coming in ragged gasps. After about 5 minutes, she paused to catch her breath, her heart pounding in her chest, but then she heard it again, a twig snapping behind her. Glancing back, she was met with the horrifying sight of one of the coyote-like figures perched on the ridgeline. To her utter terror, it stood upright on its hind legs, letting out a bone-chilling scream that pierced the night. The sound was an eerie mix of a coyote howl, amplified through a megaphone, reverberating in a way that felt unnatural, almost otherworldly. Fear gripped her as she ran faster, driven by a primal instinct to survive. Eventually, she reached a service road and frantically waved down a Peabody mine worker driving a work vehicle. Climbing into the truck, she tried to explain her frantic situation, emphasizing the importance of her caravan leader, Buck, who could clarify things to his manager. As they drove away, Amanda dared to glance in the rearview mirror. Her heart sank as she caught sight of those haunting eyes reflecting back at her in the red glow of the brake lights, lingering just beyond the reach of the truck's headlights. Though she hoped they hadn't followed, the unsettling feeling in her gut told her otherwise. When they arrived back at Johnny's parents' house, Amanda rushed inside, desperate to recount her ordeal. Despite the language barrier, since Johnny's family primarily spoke Navajo, she conveyed the gravity of her experience through broken sobs and frantic gestures. Her friends listened intently, their expressions shifting from concern to something more serious as she shared the chilling details. In the morning, after a night filled with restless sleep, they called upon a medicine man for guidance. He arrived with a sense of purpose, performing rituals to cleanse Amanda and the home. Overnight, nothing unusual occurred, and a sense of calm returned to the household. Yet, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her back. Though the blessings seemed to restore peace, her trip was cut short. The experience lingered in her mind, leaving her with questions that would haunt her long after she returned home. What had she truly encountered in the shadows of Black Mesa? And was it merely a figment of her panic, or something far more sinister? Have you ever faced something truly terrifying? Eerie Shadows wants to hear your story. Share your chilling experiences with us on Reddit, and together we'll uncover the eerie mysteries lurking in the shadows. If you'd like to support the channel and help us create even more terrifying content, consider checking out our Patreon or Ko-fi. Your support helps us keep the horror alive. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more bone-chilling tales like this one. Stay tuned for the next eerie episode